and welcome to our Zoom worship service. We preface our service by acknowledging that the land on which our homes and our church were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or other nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Peluche, and the Shitshunsh, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you're joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide, and where they are now. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. This morning, we're going to take an additional moment to acknowledge the way the imperial mindset continues to threaten people on our precious planet. On Thursday, as I'm sure you're aware, Russia launched an attack on Ukraine. This act of aggression has and will continue to upset the balance of power in Europe, and indeed the whole world. However, I want to name that it feels particularly terrifying in the light of vague threats from Vladimir Putin about what he might do if the US or NATO try to stop him. For those of us who lived through the Cold War, the duck and cover generation, the ones who still have nightmares after watching The Day After, the ones who cheered on Matthew Broderick in war games, this conflict presses all of our trauma buttons around nuclear war. So let's breathe into that together for just a moment. Or if deep breathing isn't right for you, choose some other activity or practice that helps you feel safe and supported in the here and now. In this moment, there's not much for us to do beyond donating to relief agencies. I forgot to light the candle. Let me light the candle. For Ukraine. So there's not much for us to do beyond donating to relief agencies, and if that changes, if I learn of additional ways we can support the people of Ukraine, I promise I'll let you know. For now though, let's pray together. Spirit of life and love, pervasive hope of peace, we add our voices to the chorus of all those who align themselves with you. How could this be allowed to happen? When will people learn to choose generosity over greed, compassion over aggression, creation over destruction? It is too much. It was too much the first time a single person died for the sake of imperial ambition, and so very, very many have died. Our hearts go out to the people of Ukraine, those wounded and killed, those displaced, dislocated, those lying awake listening to the sound of explosions. Help them know they are not alone. The eyes of the world are on them, the hearts of the world are with them. We hold as well the people of Russia. Awaken their conscience and help them to know themselves part of the human family, neither greater nor lesser. May they continue to find the courage to stand up for what is right and just. May they be part of a global movement to hold their leaders accountable. our own minds, our hands, our hearts, our bodies, we pledge once more to the cause of peace, remembering, as Lao Tzu taught, that peace between nations begins with peace in our hearts. Let us breathe in peace and love. Let us breathe out peace and love. And let us continue on together. Amen, and blessed be. Let's continue to hold the people of Ukraine in our hearts as we listen to three of them sing a prayer for peace. And now let's enter into our service with our traditional words of welcome, the chalice lighting, and our sung affirmation. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. We're hoping everyone has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's go ahead and light them together.
Hi, I'm David Nelson.
I'm Nancy Nelson.
And I'm Kate Nelson.
In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
So, 3 times now, Ryan, our Assistant Director of Family Ministries, in one of our staff meetings has piped up as we've talked about future worship services and said, I've thought a lot about this topic. This is code for, I think I might have something I want to say. Each time, I've offered to share the service, and each time, rather than jotting down a few thoughts, he sent me a beautifully written piece, way too long to be a single homily. The latest one was over 5,000 words. I usually try to keep to less than half of that. We've then worked together to edit them down, and as those of you know, if you attended those previous services, the end product has been thoughtful, well-crafted, well-delivered, and thought-provoking. Today's homily, though, is something of a departure for Ryan. When I was talking about the issues of belonging as presented in Brene Brown's Alice of the Heart, Ryan piped up again and said that he had some thoughts he wanted to share, and these thoughts are something of a departure. They're deeply personal, revealing, at least in part, the truth of his inner life. You'll see he shares his own struggle with self-acceptance, perfectionism, loneliness, and belonging. It resonated deeply for me, and I hope it will for some of you as well. It's such a profound gift when someone opens up this way, showing the tender and vulnerable parts of themselves. There's no more sacred gift than a person's story. As we listen to Ryan's, may we hold him and ourselves gently, offering the unconditional love and acceptance that are the hallmark of our beloved community. But first, let's sing together. Come sing a song with me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and reign with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
I'd invite us now to sink just a little bit deeper into a time of meditation or of prayer. I've been thinking a lot lately about the need to develop, embrace, and promote an ethic of community care. The social safety net, made up of beleaguered nonprofits and overburdened bureaucratic systems, has huge holes everywhere. Everyone I know is stressed to the point of overwhelm, sad, scared, and feeling helpless. At least some of the time, because of course we also pendulum into the present moment and continue to experience the joy and beauty that life offers us in abundance. So many things are broken. So many things are ending or falling apart. The future feels very uncertain, and this latest invasion only erodes that further. I think the most important work we can do right now is to take good care. Our most important task is learning how to take better care of ourselves, listening to our own body, mind, spirit, offering ourselves fierce compassion, setting good boundaries, choosing to say no sometimes so that we have the internal resources to choose our most important yeses. Our most important task is learning how to take better care of each other, offering unconditional love and acceptance, spreading kindness and compassion, working for justice and peace with courage and integrity. Our most important task is learning how to take better care of our poor, beleaguered planet, feeling our way choice by choice into a more sustainable way of being. Now, these are not three separate tasks, but a single one with different facets like a prism. And just as a prism splits the light into an infinite array of colors, so this task splits, with each of us having different and unique ways of living into it at any given moment. So as we move through the days and weeks to come, may this be our mantra and our practice. Take good care. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of each other. Take good care of the planet. Every person, precious beyond measure. Every moment, precious beyond measure. Let's rest in the silence together for just a moment. Amen, and blessed be.
Wake to the sound, singing of the trees. One that I love, sleeping next to me. Warm by the fire, coffee in my hands. First light of dawn streaks across the land. Life's not so hard when you want what you've got. A life filled with song and a place to belong. It all goes so fast when you just can't relax. So just be here now and let it all out. Jump in the lake, icy on my skin. Pillars of light shifting out and in. Think of the fish, mountains glowing red. Soft rolling clouds, bird songs fill my head. Life's not so hard when you want what you've got. A life filled with song and a place to belong. It all goes so fast when you live in the past. So just be here now and we'll figure it out. Life's not so hard when you want what you've got. A life filled with song and a place to belong. It all goes so fast when you just can't relax. So just be here now and we'll figure it out. Just be here now and we'll figure it out.
A man of many talents is our Ryan. Our reading this morning comes from a book called Radical Belonging by Lindo Bacon, PhD. You belong in your body. You belong in this world, and we belong together. You wouldn't know that by looking at the current state of our world. We are increasingly disconnected from ourselves and from each other and from the world around us. The fallout is heart-wrenching. Depression, anxiety, suicide, drug addiction, and violence are all on the rise. Also on the upswing are hate crimes, intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and incarceration. We can and must do better. The truth is, we don't need to create connection with each other or even within ourselves. It is already there. It is already there. What we need to do is restore the innate connection that has been severed by a prejudicial culture. Being and belonging are our birthright and our future.
For today's sermon on belonging, I'd like to share a story with you. So, many years ago, a boy lived out in the countryside with his parents and his brother. At home, he was loved and well cared for. At school, he had lots of friends and supportive teachers. At church, people met him with hugs and smiles. In the woods and the fields around his home, he loved nothing more than to chase the bugs and call to the birds and be as one with nature. Everywhere he went, he belonged. He was very happy. But one day, the boy's brother died in an accident, and his world started to fall apart. At home, he had no one to play with. His parents were angry and yelling all the time, so he spent his free time in his bedroom alone. At school, no one would play with him either because he was sad all the time, and his friends just couldn't understand him anymore. At church, people now looked at him with pity, and then quickly looked away. And a year later, his family moved into town, far away from his beloved woods and fields. And all at once, the boy didn't belong anywhere anymore. He was alone, and he was empty. He longed to belong again, so he began trying his hardest to be whatever the people around him wanted him to be. He got perfect grades, joined clubs, volunteered, obeyed the rules, tried to treat everyone kindly, anything to fit in. He knew that if he could just fix every flaw, meet every need, say all the right things, if he could just be perfect, everyone would love him again. Well, the accolades piled up. He earned a lot of praise and admiration in his community. His parents and teachers applauded his efforts, boasted of his achievements, and assured him constantly that great things were in his future. He was still full of sorrow, but no one could see it behind the glitter of pins and medals and his potential and prospects. In high school, while his peers were going to dances and parties, taking risks, trying on new identities, figuring out who they were, he was at home, alone, reading old books and writing sad thoughts into his journal. However, he went on to become his class valedictorian. He was crowned most likely to succeed by his classmates and got full ride offers to various universities around the country. At college, he continued struggling to prove his worth. He spent most of his time in his dorm room studying. It just no longer occurred to him that other people might want him around. He completed 2 degrees, summa cum laude, in 4 years, and went on to get his master's as well. And everyone could tell that this talented, intelligent, hard-working young man was destined for fame, fortune, and renown. But none of those things were in the young man's future. Even with degrees, awards, and experience under his belt, he struggled to choose a path or build a career. Instead of celebrity and stardom that he'd been led to think of as his birthright, he ended up living a small and unremarkable life. Because even though he looked great on paper, he didn't know how to connect with other people still, and there's just not that much you can accomplish all by yourself. Now, if you haven't guessed yet, that story was all about me. I was a pathological overachiever, and all my life I was told that I would be important and influential one day. Well, one day came around, and nothing was really waiting there for me because no one was waiting there for me. And I've realized since that time that without connections to other people, most of what's best in us just lies dormant. Now, I didn't tell you this story to get pity or sympathy. The point that I'm trying to make is that belonging, that feeling of love and being wanted, is so essential that the lack of it can nullify every other advantage. The odds were way stacked in my favor. Beyond being gifted, it's not nothing that I'm also white, male, straight, able-bodied, young, middle class, well-educated. But in spite of all of that, I haven't made much of a mark in the world because it just never felt like the outer world had anything to do with me. As someone who has spent most of his life feeling unwanted, I can say this with certainty. Belonging is everything. Without it, life is incessantly treacherous. For one thing, it's just terrifying to try and take any risks with your life when no one's got your back, and you have nowhere to go back to if you fail. It's nearly impossible to choose a career path when you believe that nobody will want what you have to offer. Dating is obviously pretty much out of the question if you're convinced of your undesirability. And really, everything is just a lot harder when it never occurs to you that other people can be helpful. Now, I wouldn't be here speaking to you today if I hadn't eventually stumbled into a few powerful experiences of belonging. The first one was at a mental health clinic. Yes, as a patient. At college, I began seeing a counselor. I kind of had to trick myself into it by making it a research project on self-improvement. Well, as we delved into the traumas of my childhood and those protective layers of numbness started to peel away, the pain was simply overwhelming, and I seriously began to consider suicide. Now, my counselor, fortunately, helped me to admit myself into a nearby clinic so I could escape the pressures of college life while I worked through my feelings. And it was the kind of place where they strip you of just everything except for the clothes on your back, and even if they might serve as a noose, and then tell you where to be and what to do every minute of the day. Now, I know that sounds a lot like prison, but it was actually liberating. Most of the day was spent in group sessions where we various addicts and petty criminals and social failures could share our stories. I found myself surrounded by people who were unabashedly open about their brokenness. Nobody fronted or posed. I mean, what would be the point? We knew where we were. We knew why we were there. So, everybody was just simply themselves, with no apologies. And that was deeply, deeply healing. After I got out, I reacquainted with friends I'd known from high school and started spending every day at their house, eating junk food on the couch, playing video games, and smoking a lot of pot. This was the opposite of everything I'd been living up to that point in my life, everything that I'd been told to value and to pursue, and I felt happier than I had since my brother died. Now, in one sense, it was a complete waste of time, but in another, it was meaningful and life-affirming, and that's because I was connected, and I belonged. It was actually on that couch that I met my wife. It was inconceivable to me that any girl could like me, but thankfully Brandy was so explicit about liking me that all my attempts at denial were ultimately foiled. Which is to say, she wasn't going to take no for an answer. Not that I ever tried. In Brandy, I found the unconditional acceptance that made it possible to feel like maybe there was a place for me in the world. Now, I've faced a lot of painful rejections since that time, but since Brandy and I met some 20 years ago, I've always had at least one place in my life where I fully belong, and that has been enough to keep my head above the waves. You might be thinking, well, what about UUCP? Do I belong here, in this community, with you? Well, it's definitely true that I've been shown nothing but warmth and kindness and love since the very first day I set foot in our sanctuary. Nonetheless, there's a part of me that will always be afraid that in time this connection will fall apart too. That the acceptance I've been shown is ultimately conditional. I mean, you're a church. You have to be nice to everybody, right? Fear abides, and hypervigilance is an incredibly tough habit to kick. So when I agreed to participate in this sermon, my initial plan was to assemble a bunch of really good Brene Brown quotes into a nice outline, add a little bit of humor and anecdotes, and basically produce a very efficient, relatable, and mostly forgettable commentary on belonging. But the hypocrisy of a heartless sermon on belonging was too much for me. So I've tried hard today to lean into vulnerability and to lean into authenticity. And it's really, really hard. I'm still holding back in a lot of ways. And, that's okay. It's okay. Because this coming back to belonging is a process, and this is what I'm capable of right now. This is the limit of my belonging for now. In the Atlas of the Heart, Dr. Brown says that true belonging doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. Needless to say, when you've suffered a great deal of rejection in your life, when being who you are has caused you to suffer, staying authentic and open requires an obscene amount of courage, which is to say, faith in yourself. What makes it so hard to return to a place of belonging is that rejection, shame, and our responses to them create a vicious cycle that undermines this faith in self. So it looks like this. Experiences of rejection lead us to feel shame. To quell that shame and to avoid further rejection, we resort to perfectionism, isolation, hypervigilance, and other defenses. But because these efforts are premised on keeping other people away, they inevitably lead to further rejection, which causes more shame, and so on, and it just reinforces itself. As Dr. Brown puts it in the book, we become terrified of feeling pain, so we engage in behaviors that become a magnet for more pain. It's a sad irony. Fortunately, this cycle can be broken, and it only requires breaking a single link. While we have little control over whether others reject us or not, and we might not make it through a single day without our psychic defenses, there's something we can do about shame. The first step is self-compassion. And what this means is you give up on trying to fix yourself, or improve yourself, or prove your worth. Instead, you focus on appreciating each of your broken pieces without the slightest wish that they be less broken, more beautiful, or more like everyone else's. It's, of course, easy to love the parts of ourselves that we also happen to like. But healing shame requires that we learn to love our selfish impulses, petty emotions, flawed bodies, broken promises, and even our shame itself. All of it. As it is. No exceptions. Hold and comfort each and every perceived flaw as you would a wounded child. This is a lifelong practice of liberation, of laying down burdens you forgot you were even bearing. Self-compassion is only the first step, though. Just as shame is inherently social, so too must be its remedy. Starting from the internal sanctuary that we create with self-compassion, we have to risk sharing our shame with others who can listen deeply and respond with empathy. Of course, this can't be just anybody. You need to find others who are trustworthy and caring and safe. In my own experience, it helped immensely to find other people who were broken in a lot of the same ways I was, and roughly the same amount. Because empathy comes easily from someone who's already walked the path that you're on. And doing it this way, it gives you the opportunity to give empathy to other people as well. Just like love or kindness, empathy is one of those magical things where the more of it you give, the more you end up having. In time, one meaningful connection at a time, trust can regrow. A sense of worthiness can return. And all the defensive walls that keep other people away will begin to come down. I know this to be true because it's the life I'm living right now. It's right exactly where I'm at in my journey, and I know I'm definitely not going back. Without belonging, little else matters, because connection in some form is the very source of meaning. The next time you read the news and find yourself confounded by people committing their lives to weird conspiracies, disingenuous demagogues, and other nonsense, just remember the power of belonging. Without it, life is empty, and if attaining it requires giving up decency, rationality, deeply held values, even a connection to reality, then so be it. For a lot of people, even QAnon is better than going it alone. Giving the disenfranchised and the misunderstood a place of understanding, a community not premised on hate and fear, is likely some of the most important work of our time. Perhaps the most important work of our church. The lonely and fearful, they can't be won over by facts and logic and rhetoric. They, perhaps should I say we, just need empathy and compassion. Those are what will heal a broken world, always and always. As for me, I've come a long way from the stoic academic hiding in his dorm room. I have a family, and I have a community, and I have a meaningful job. I'm pretty sure this gig isn't going to make me rich and famous, but I do get to work with and for some of the finest people I've ever known. I still have a long way to go to heal my shame and to achieve a deep sense of belonging, but that's okay. I'm grateful that at least I'm moving in a positive direction, and I'm also grateful to have this community to practice with. So thank you all for your kindness and encouragement as I keep working toward figuring out how to be a person amongst persons once again. Thank you.
I'm the strong one, I'm not nervous, and I'm tough as the crust of the earth is. I move mountains, I move churches, and I glow cause I know what my worth is. I don't ask how hard the work is. Got a rough, indestructible surface. Diamonds and platinum, I find them, I flatten them. I take what I'm handed, I break what's demanded. But under the surface, I feel berserk as a tightrope walker in a three-ring circus. Under the surface, was Hercules ever like, yo, I don't wanna fight Cerberus. Under the surface, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can be of service. A flaw or a crack, a straw in the sack that breaks a camel's back. What breaks a camel's back? It's like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Whoa, pressure that'll dip, dip, dip till your disco pop. Whoa, give it to your sister's older. Give her all the heavy things we can shoulder. Who am I if I can run with the ball? If I fall to pressure like a grip, 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 then it won't let go. Whoa, pressure like a tick, tick, tick till it's ready to blow. Whoa, give it to your sister stronger. See if she can hang on a little longer. Who am I if I can carry it all? If I falter under the surface, I hide my nerves and it worsens. I worry something's gonna hurt us under the surface. The ship doesn't swerve as it hurt how big the iceberg is under the surface. I think about my purpose, can I somehow reserve this? Line up the dominoes, a light wind blows. You try to start tumbling on and on and on it goes. But wait, if I could shake the crushing weight of expectations, would that free some room for joy or relaxation or simple pleasure? Instead we measure this growing pressure. Keeps growing, keep going, 'cause all we know is pressure. like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Whoa. Pressure like a tip, tip, tip till you just go pop. Whoa, oh, oh. Give it to your sister, it doesn't hurt, and see if she can handle every family burden. Watches you buckles and bends, but never breaks. No mistakes, just pressure like a grip, 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 and it won't let go. Whoa. Pressure like a tick, tick, tick till you're ready to blow. Whoa, oh, oh. Give it to your sister and never wonder if the same pressure would have pulled you under. Who am I if I don't have what it takes? No cracks, no breaks, no mistakes, no pressure.
Our closing reading is a poem by my dear friend, Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. It's called Wholehearted and Unafraid. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Sam wouldn't tell you this, but that song, he worked with over 140 tracks to get it to come together like that. It's incredible. So, Wholehearted and Unafraid. I do not need you to prove your flawlessness, to convince me you are exemplary or even competent. I've given up on perfection as a means to anything, especially love. I do not long for unparalleled greatness, phenomenal talent, or the always adequate. I no longer search for immaculate containers to hold anything, especially goodness. I have become ready to be faithful to the broken, the damaged and surviving, the ones unfit to wield anything but humanness and hope in the face of what hungers to do harm and destroy. I've become one of the many who by breaking have become wholehearted, no longer afraid to join the cause of imperfection and revel in the heartbeat rhythm of the unfinished, the unrelenting, who keep trying, keep going, keep forgiving, keep returning to each other. Let's sing together now our musical benediction. Let's say together now the words to embody our chalice flame. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. Dear ones, Go forward knowing that you belong with all of your flaws and imperfections, all of your gifts, all of your doubts. Every single piece of you is exactly the way it's meant to be and is held in a love so deep and vast, we just can't fathom it. So, go into your week knowing yourselves beloved in the fullness and in the reality of who you are.